Dear friends, dear students, welcome to our Comparative Politics PhD class. Today we'll be talking about electoral systems. There are two different electoral system models in the world. The one is majoritarian democracy, that is actually identified with majoritarian electoral systems, and the consensus democracy, that is identified with proportional representation, proportional electoral systems. The plurality and majority single-member district methods are winner-take-all methods. The candidate supported by the larger number amount of votes wins and all other voters remain unrepresented. And hence, there is a perfect reflection of a majoritarian philosophy. Moreover, the party gaining a nationwide majority or plurality of the seats will tend to be overrepresented in terms of parliamentary seats. Of course, we are talking about the majoritarian electoral systems. Now we are talking about the majoritarian electoral systems. In sharp contrast, however, the basic aim of proportional representation is to represent both majorities and minorities, and instead of representing or over-representing or under-representing any parties, it aims to translate votes into seats proportionally. Dear friends, countries are rather strictly attached to their electoral systems, and it is not very usual for countries to change their electoral systems. The scholarly literature on electoral systems focuses on the degree of proportionality or disproportionality in their translation of votes into seats and on their effects on the numbers of parties in party systems. Electoral formula, district magnitude, electoral threshold, the total membership of the body to be elected, the influence of presidential elections on legislative elections, and inter-party rings are the variables of electoral system identification. Majority formulas require an absolute majority for election. One way to fulfill this requirement is to conduct a runoff second ballot between the top two candidates if none of the candidates in the first round of voting has received a majority of the votes. Generally, in presidential elections, such a formula is performed. The majority runoff second round is rather rare in parliamentary elections. A closely related method is used in France for elections to the National Assembly. It is elected by a mixed majority plurality formula in single member districts. On the first ballot, an absolute majority is required for elections, but if no candidate wins a majority, a plurality suffices on the second ballot. Candidates failing to win a minimum percentage of the vote on the first ballot of 12.5% of the registered votes since 1976 are barred from the second ballot. The second ballot contest is usually between two principal candidates, so that in practice there is no big difference between the majority plurality formula and the majority runoff. The alternative vote used in Australia is a true majority formula. The voters are asked to indicate their first preference, second preference, and so on among the candidates. If a candidate receives an absolute majority of the first preferences, he or she is elected. If there is no such majority, the candidate with the lowest number of the first preferences is dropped, and the ballots with this candidate as the first preference are transferred to the second preferences. This procedure is repeated by excluding the weakest candidate and redistributing the ballots in question to the next highest preferences in each stage of the counting until a majority winner emerges. The alternative vote is also used for presidential elections in Ireland. And another formula is the D'Hondt formula. The list of proportional systems may be subdivided further according to the mathematical formula used to translate votes into seats. The most frequently applied method is the D'Hondt formula, which has a slight bias in favor of large parties and against small parties compared with several other methods. And I'm going to count some countries that are using the D'Hondt formula. Albania using, Argentine, Armenia, Austria, Belgium, Brazil, Bulgaria, Cambodia, Cape Verde, Chile, Colombia, Croatia, Czech Republic, Denmark, Dominican Republic, East Timor, Ecuador, Estonia, Fiji, Finland, Guatemala, Hungary, Iceland, Israel, Japan, Kosovo, Luxembourg, Macedonia, Moldova, Montenegro, Netherlands, Paraguay, Peru, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Scotland, Serbia, Slovenia, Spain, Turkey, Uruguay, and Wales. All those countries are utilizing the D'Hondt model when they are translating votes into seats. So how the D'Hondt model works? There is an example in this slide presentation. It is from Turkey's 2002 general elections and about the city of Turkey where there were 8 seats. In using the D'Hondt model, what did we do? First, we write down all parties' total number of votes. We write them from the up to the top. For instance, on the slide you see CHP winning around 101,830 votes. Another party, the DYP, winning something like 97,000 votes and so on and so forth. We write down the total votes won by the parties. So I recommend you follow these slides. When you follow this slide, it is actually easy to understand how the D'Hondt model is working. And first thing, we write down the total number of votes gained by each party. The second thing we do, we divide them into two. So each party's vote is divided into two. You see, the CHP's vote is divided into two. And the DYP's vote as well, the AKP's vote as well. So we divide each party's vote into two, the second thing we do. The third thing we do is, keeping up, dividing the votes. For instance, the party's vote is divided by 3 this time. So you see the CHP's vote was, the total vote was 101,830 votes, and when it is divided into 3, it is around 33,000 votes. Then the fourth step is, dividing the total votes into 4. The next is 5, the next is 6, the next is 7, and the last is 8, because there are 8 seats in the region, in the district. So first we write down from up to down the number of votes gained by each party. Then we divide them into 2, then into 3, then into 4. But what is important here, we are not dividing the 50,000 for CHP. We are not dividing 50,000 for CHP into 3. We are dividing the 101,830 votes, the total amount of votes of CHP. We are dividing into 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we are not actually dividing the 50,000 into 3 or 4. That is important. Dear friends, what we are doing later on, after we write down the number of votes gained by each party and after we divided them into 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, we underline the highest 8 numbers because there are 8 seats in that region. If there were 10, we were underlying 10, but there are 8 regions in that, 8 seats in that region. So please have a look at this slide. There are underlined 8 portions, underlined 8 numbers in there. And according to those figures, in that region in Turkey, CHP is likely to have 2 seats, DYP is likely to have 2 seats, AKP 2 seats, MHP 1 seat, and GP 1 seat. As I've told you previously, that region is having 8 seats. But there is a minimum national limit in Turkey. If you don't exceed the national limit in nationwide scale, you can have no seat in parliament, nowhere in the country. So there is a nationwide limit. If you pass that nationwide limit, you can have members of parliaments in some cities, but if you don't pass the national limit, you have no seat at all in the parliament. So in that elections, just AKP and CHP had exceeded the national limit, and what happened? The 8 seats in that country were partitioned by the major 2 parties, CHP and AKP, 4-4. 4 seats by AKP and 4 seats by CHP. If you have a look at the slide, you will figure out the most highest 8 portions, and you will see that it is 4 to CHP and 4 to AKP. Dear friends, I'm continuing with electoral systems. There is a mixed member proportional representation in Germany and New Zealand. Voters have 2 votes, one for the party list and one for the constituency candidate. There are some extra or balancing seats for compensation, and they make the representation more proportional. The third main type of proportional representation is the single transferable vote. It differs from least proportional representation in that the voters vote for individual candidates instead of for party lists. The ballot is similar to that of the alternative vote system. It contains the names of the candidates, and the voters are asked to rank order these. The procedure for determining the winning candidates is slightly more complicated than with the alternative vote. There are 2 kinds of transfers that take place. First, any surplus votes not needed by candidates who already have the minimum quota of votes required for elections and are transferred to the next most preferred candidates on the ballots in question. Second, the weakest candidate is eliminated and his or her ballots are transferred in the same way. If necessary, these steps are repeated until all of the available seats are filled. The surplus votes of detected winner and loser are transferred to other candidates. Australia, let me give you an example. In Australia, a candidate who has reached or exceeded the quota is declared elected. If any such elected candidate has more votes than the quota, the excess votes are transferred to other candidates. Votes that would have gone to winner go to the next preference. So this can be done in several ways. See the section on counting methods below. If no one new meets the quota, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated and those votes are transferred to each voter's next preferred candidate. This process repeats until either a winner is found for every seat or there are many seats as remaining candidates. Dear friends, thank you for listening to me today, and I'll be pleased to meet you on our forthcoming class. Thank you. Enjoy your day.